Good morning, everyone. We would like to welcome you to DSO Entity's webinar on the technical vision. I think we are slowly getting more and more attendees that are on time. So I will wait maybe some more seconds, 1 more minute to officially start our webinar to make sure all or most of the viewers can see us from the very beginning with our introduction. Good, very good. I see more and more attendees are coming in. Therefore, I would propose I start with a little introduction. As I said, very welcome to DSO Entity's webinar on our technical vision. My name is Elisa Schenner, and I'm working for DSO Entity as team lead for strategy and regulatory affairs. And I have the pleasure to moderate the webinar today with a very interesting and good panel. You can already see our participants for the next hour. Today, we are going to have a twofold objective. As you can see, on the one hand, we would like to introduce you to DSO Entity's technical vision. And on the other hand, we also want to discuss, especially with the representative of the European Commission, how this technical vision is also matching with the current or ongoing political priorities of the European Commission and the European institutions. And we would like to do this in an efficient and concise way. So we have a program that shouldn't last longer than 1 hour and 15 minutes to give you all the relevant information in a very little time span. And as you can see on our agenda, we will start to kick off the webinar with our Secretary General. Peter Vermaat is going to give us a welcome, but also introduce a bit the background of this technical vision. We are then going to have a presentation from our team lead for the expert groups, from Carlos Castel, on the technical vision. So all the technical nitty-gritty details will be presented to you. Before then, we are going to have an interview-style intervention from the European Commission, and it's my pleasure to welcome also today Susanna Sadlova from DG ENA, who is going to discuss the interesting question if we see the European Commission and the European Union on the right path also to enable DSOs to fulfill their vision in the future. And at the end of the session, we are going to have also a Q&A. So there will be the opportunity for you, for the audience, to interact. And we would ask you to interact via the Q&A box, not via the chat, because also in the Q&A box, it gives you the opportunity to rank certain responses higher, so that if there is a question, you can rank it up. So we will then get also a bit of indication which questions are especially interesting for the audience. But we will not only have this Q&A at the end of the session, also after the presentation of Peter and Carlos, we are going to have a little Q&A. So if you have some more specific questions on the technical vision, this is the moment where you can get active. And also in between that, we will have a poll to keep you entertained and that you are not dozing off during this webinar. Without further ado, I'll now give the floor to Peter for his welcome, but also for a little introduction of the background of this technical vision.
Yes, thank you, Elisa, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. And I think Elisa has given a good introduction to the program and our objectives for this webinar. So thank you also, Susanna, for joining us from the European Commission, and also thank you to the team organizing this, because after all, DSO Entity is also there to share knowledge with our stakeholders, and I think that this is, as a webinar, a very nice example how we can do that. And let me please also encourage you to share your observations and questions in the Q&A chat a little later. Now, before going into the details that will be presented by my colleague Carlos, it is my pleasure to introduce the wider framework within which we have worked on the technical vision from DSO Entity. And as a starting point, I think everybody will recognize the challenges that come from the overriding objectives of the European Commission in having the renewables developed and injected into the grid, reducing the carbon dioxide in the injections, the carbon dioxide injections, and also facilitating that by making sure that many electric vehicles and heat pumps and any other active customer participation enables the transition to a sustainable energy system. And all of that, as you can see at the bottom of this chart, has an impact to the DSO grid. So there is relevance to look into the grid, the facilitation that we need, the development that we need to do, how to make the future possible. And DSOs are in action mode there. We will illustrate that in this webinar. But let's not forget that apart from the objectives, also the incoming Commission is further developing their views. And I think it's relevant to understand that both from the wider frame of the competitiveness compass, but also zooming in a bit more on the energy system in the Clean Industrial Deal and specifically also in the action plan for affordable energy prices, you can see that the targets are there, but also the way we want to get there is refreshed, I would say, with the incoming Commission. And that is what we try to illustrate also today. But before we go there, let me go to the next chart, because all the developments that are here have a major impact on the system. And if you would ask me to summarize that in sort of one view, I think this does the job, because what you see here is that the traditional, the classic, I would say, energy system changes from a single direction system into a bi-directional system, because that is in fact what energy transition is about. Renewables injecting in many, many places in a decentralized way into the grid at the DSO level, and the electrification with electric vehicles and heat pumps and other devices progressing and making sure that energy consumption is in the most sustainable way. But this major shift from a single direction to a bi-directional system is in fact the driver for the changes we need to do and the investments and the development for the DSO grid. Now, on the next chart, let me introduce why we developed this vision, because it's also illustrated in this chart. You can acknowledge that DSOs, which are many in the European Union, it is over 800 members to us, and there are a little more, but this map illustrates that we cover the entire European Union, but in diversity. And diversity lies in the size and the nature of the grid per country, but it's also important that we still develop a common frame that shapes the wording, the technical frame that we use across Europe to make sure that we share best practices and go together in a united way. And all of that facilitating our customers, both industrial and consumer, to make sure that everybody can play his role in the energy transition. On the next chart, we illustrate what drives our vision. And I think traditionally affordability, resilience, and reliability have been there for all of the time. But as we all know, sustainability is now a prime objective to go. And all of those dimensions will be covered in our vision. And perhaps when we go there, Carlos will also illustrate that affordability and reliability are key. Let's not forget about resilience. I think we have seen that both on cyber resilience, but also on the impact of climate change. Resilience is a very important dimension to look at, and all of that doing it in a sustainable way. And in doing so, we provide value to citizens and the businesses across Europe, because we create economic value by the sheer impulse we give by investing in the grid. We create economic value also by enabling businesses to develop into a competitive industry and to enable citizens to play their part in the energy transition and to benefit from the value it brings. And thirdly, naturally, we also bring the benefit of the reduction of carbon dioxide and increasing our strategic autonomy in the energy system. Now, on the next chart, we illustrate the building blocks. And Carlos will go into that in detail, but obviously on top, we always have in mind to serve our customers. And then there are 5 blocks that comprise together the main dimensions, the main areas DSOs need to develop. At the top, you see the planning and investment. I think you're all familiar to the investment challenges we have. It's not our target to invest as much as possible, though. Our target is to enable energy transition in an efficient way. So we will use the existing to a maximum utilization, but also efficiently develop and build what is needed. And at the bottom, you see data and digitization, one of the prime facilitators, I would say. And then in between, we also need to focus on market facilitation and the engagement of prosumers to make sure that operations and maintenance keep going. Let's not forget that every change we make is in the system that is live, and we need to keep the lights on. And last but not least, we also need to work on resilience and sustainability in the system itself. Now, my last chart is also to illustrate that we cannot make a blueprint for this. We need to do it step by step. So that is also why the technical vision was developed in a modular approach. So the main framework is there. And every year in the time to come, we will deepen certain dimensions or we will add certain areas, also following the development of the policies and, for instance, also new technologies entering the scene. And all of that in a modular approach we cannot do on our own. So the chart that is next is the starting point for, I would say, the rest of this webinar, because we can only do this together. We need a close cooperation with NSOE and the TSO system, because after all, the energy system is comprised of many subsystems. We need to work with the institutional stakeholders at the European Commission and ACER and everybody who is there in the institutional frame. And last but not least, with you, all system players, to make sure that we have a competitive, resilient, efficient, and customer-centric power system for the future. So this is it for my brief introduction. And I think we now directly go to Carlos for further details on the technical vision that he will illustrate to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So indeed, now I will dive into the different topics within this vision, answering 3 questions. What are the system needs? What is the role of DSOs addressing those needs? And what value DSOs bring to customers while addressing those needs? But before going to it, let me stress that all the topics are interlinked, as Peter mentioned, and like the structure of a house, they must be carefully placed into the right place to ensure that they fulfill their purpose, which is, in our case, is to serve customers and to reach a net zero electricity system. So having said that, if we move into the core area of planning and investment, the first system need is the unlocking of the massive investments required for the energy transition. As Peter illustrated, most of the transition will happen at the distribution systems, and the role of DSOs on that matter is to efficiently deliver those investments that enable the transition. And in order to do so, DSOs will use an anticipatory approach and will contribute to the improvement of the access to funding and improvement of a forward-looking regulation. And by doing so, not only deliver the value of efficiency, but also allow the acceleration of the energy transition, allow the enhancement of the competition within Europe, and contributes to the overall economic growth. Now, if the second system need on this area is manage the uncertainty created by this cross-vector energy system and the technological advances. And what DSOs can do on this regard is to use the DNDPs as a tool to coordinate and collaborate not only with TSO, but with all the stakeholders that are involved in this planning exercise, with the ultimate objective to optimize costs and facilitate the implementation of those reliable services. Now, if we move to the core area of market facilitation and procurement engagement, one of the system needs is congestion management and system balance, coming from this increased variability of generation. And what the role of DSOs in this regard is to integrate the flexibility with infrastructure upgrades and to improve customer access to those flexibility services. And by doing so, customers will benefit from monetizing their energy use while avoiding unnecessary grid investments. A second system need regarding procurement engagements is in a scenario with a full integration of energy sharing or different energy sharing models. DSOs will have to manage transactions between millions and millions of customers, as in comparison with today, where we have a dozen of suppliers interacting with the millions of customers. And the role of DSOs in this regard will be to support the customers in finding the right models which bring benefit to society at large and allow customers to access affordable and green electricity. Now, if we move into operations and maintenance, as we have seen with the increased complexity of the system with demand response, flexibility, energy sharing, there is a system need to manage all these particularities. And the role of the DSOs in that regard is to adopt advanced digital technologies that allow DSOs to continue maintaining the reliability and the security of the power system while transforming into these to reach the net zero electricity system. Now, moving to the resilience and sustainability area, one system need is to have the capacity to withstand the more frequent extreme weather events that often lead to outages in DSO grids. And the role of DSOs in that regard is twofold. On one hand is to reinforce the infrastructure through the DNDPs, through the accessing to funds, and also to foster the emergency response, which build on top of the smart or active system management. And then on the other hand is to contribute and advance the efforts on sustainability within the DSO business itself by reducing the amount of CO2 emissions created by the DSO business itself. And by doing so, customers will benefit from uninterrupted access to electricity and with a faster recovery, especially after the incident. A second topic for resilience and sustainability is cybersecurity. As mentioned by Peter, the increased integration of electric vehicles, smart appliances, and all the different assets amplifies the vulnerability of cyber threats. And the role of DSOs in that regard is to ensure that the cybersecurity standards are consistently applied across the entire value chain. And by doing so, customers will benefit from both having their data and their security of supply secured from cyber attacks. And last but not least, on the area of data and digitalization, we can also see that with the energy transition, we have a variety, increasing variety of players and data sources. And this requires a system that ensures smooth data exchanges. And in this regard, DSO's role is to facilitate or to ensure interoperability, so customers can have a better access and active participation, also to foster innovative solutions, and as a consequence, also to enhance competitiveness. And now, I think we can, after this description of the areas, I think it's clear that by the development of those areas, DSOs will be able to continue serving customers while driving the energy transition. And also let me conclude with the same call for action, as it has been, is an important component in all the challenges and all the system needs and all the responsibilities of DSO, as Peter mentioned, that the only way the transition is feasible is with stronger collaboration with the DSOs in order to optimize the planning and operation of the electricity system with authorities, regulators, and policymakers to adjust the regulation necessary to enable this system to emerge and to adjust to the needs of the transition. And then obviously to collaborate with all the system players to ensure the competitiveness, resilience, and efficiency of the whole system. And that would be it from my side. I think now it's time for the Q&A, right, Elisa?
Yes, exactly, Carlos. Indeed. So please, everyone who needs a bit more clarification or has another question, maybe something that was not tackled, questions go to Carlos. And Carlos, I think there is already a question in the Q&A for you, where it says, which aspect of the technical vision do you deem the most important one? Are you hopeful that this vision will be realized, and what could hamper its realization? So 3 questions actually, but I think you're well equipped to respond to all of them.
Yeah, well, as I said, all the topics from the technical vision are important, like the structure of the house. If you don't have them well connected between them, it will not fulfill its purpose. So I would say the most important is coherence among all of them and collaboration. And then for the second question, whether the vision will be realized, I think we are committed to make it happen. Also, we see the policymakers and authorities we have here today, the representative from the Commission, also with a big commitment to make it happen. So I wouldn't see a reason for not seeing this being a success story.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. I see Peter, you also want to jump in, please.
Yeah, perhaps I can join Carlos, because indeed we are confident that with all stakeholders in the entire value chain of the energy system, we are able to make this happen. Still, we also need to work on good conditions to get it done, right? And that is also what we try to have a dialogue with the European Commission and other stakeholders. And I think that one of the main topics for the time to come is also related to competitiveness, in the sense that we need to find a way that we efficiently make the transition with affordable prices and make sure that the access to funding is arranged. So that is one of the key topics to work on. And if I may illustrate one more element of the vision that I think, so they are all important, like Carlos said, but I think that if you look at everything that we are working on, perhaps the climate related changes and resilience are an area that we also need to further investigate. I think many of the other areas have been investigated already a lot, but I think that only now we can really see with the extreme weather events. We have seen the heat in Italy, we have seen the storms and the rain in France and Ireland, that we can also see that the resilience of the system and the recovery after the anticipated extreme weather events is super important as well. So it's like Carlos said, they come all together, but I think the resilience is a key thing that might have a bit more attention in the future.
Very good, thanks a lot. And I think also these questions we will also explore further in a minute with DG ENER. But I also see we still have one question that goes a bit more into the process of the development of the vision, where there's the question, I think, if we also went beyond DSOs and grids, and if we also interacted with other stakeholders when we developed this technical vision.
Yeah, perhaps Elisa, I can also go into that one, because like we said before, we need the vision to be a vision that we can share with everybody. The way we developed it was initially a bit more within DSO Entity, and then, for instance, checking that with ENSOE. But all our experts come from expert groups who have regular exchanges with external stakeholders when working on the network codes. And they also have the exchanges at home through their companies. So in a way, we did not do a direct external consultation, but we are confident that all of the input that has been delivered from our experts is also collecting the external views that we need to make a coherent vision.
Very good. Great. But then I would say no further questions so far in the Q&A, but to all the participants, feel free if something else comes to your mind a bit later. Carlos and Peter will still stay with us. But now I would say we can move very well on time, exactly 10 o'clock, to our interactive session with the European Commission and with Susanna Sadlova. So I'm really happy that Susanna could take the time today to join us for our discussion. Susanna is working at DG ENER at the Infrastructure and Regional Cooperation Unit, the C4, where she is responsible for DSO, TSO grid planning, but also the implementation and the monitoring. Susanna, you're still muted if you wanted to add something. But also you're responsible for the implementation and monitoring of the grid action plan, as well as also looking into the PCI and PMI processes, especially in Eastern European countries. And you have joined DG ENER a bit longer than a year ago. But before that, you also worked in the energy area with more than 10 years of experience in different functions. So we're very happy that you share your knowledge today with us on this topic. And I think what we could see very nicely in the first part that was presented by Peter and Carlos is how much the energy sector has changed, and certainly also how these changes in the energy system have affected the DSOs, which have increased their role, not only when it comes to connecting renewables and decentralized resources, but also the part that Peter mentioned at the end for the resilience and the security of supply of the system, but certainly also for competitive markets and making it happening from a more technical perspective. And while the focus of the first part was more on the question, what is also needed from the technical system and from the DSOs, we're looking more into how to make it happen. I think also a bit the question we had, where there was the question if we are hopeful we can make it happen. And I think here we certainly look at the institutions, especially also at the European institutions, since we see that more and more topics with relevance for DSOs are discussed at the European level. And we are dependent on the right regulatory framework. And therefore, I would like to know from you, Susanna, now that we have a new European Commission in the office now for roughly 100 days, they have already presented some of their strategic priorities. And certainly from us, from our side, as grids, as DSOs, we are very much interested to hear where the grid stands in the political debate. Would you say they are within the strategic priorities of the European Commission? So if you could give us here a bit of your insights, this would be great.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks a lot, Elisa, for your kind invitation. I only wanted to say good morning before. So thanks a lot for inviting me, for organizing the webinar. I think it's very timely because grids are very high on the agenda. So the challenge is related to timely grid connections, flexibility, but also, as you mentioned, customer service. They are more relevant than ever. Maybe a few numbers to illustrate why grids are so important. So in 2024, the newly installed wind and solar capacities reached record levels of 78 gigawatts, and quite a big portion of these sources are, of course, connected to the distribution grid. And the heat pump sales hit 3 million units both in 2022 and 2023. In 2024, the renewables generated a new all-time high of 48% of electricity generation, which increased actually by 7% only from 2022. So in 2022, this share was only 41%. Of course, this all posed quite a challenge to grid. At the same time, what we see are that the costs for managing grid congestions, mainly from dispatching, are actually increasing, and there could be as much cost as 26 billion by 2030. So, of course, all of this poses quite an important challenge, and that's why we look at grids a lot. So you saw that in the action plan for affordable energy, actually the further electrification of demand up to 40% by 2030 is stressed. And this all leads to increased investment needs. So we published our investment needs study in February 2025, and we expect at least 44 billion euros of investment in the DSO network annually in the upcoming MMF period. So that's between 2028, 2034. This could be as much as 309 billion euros only until 2034. And of course, this investment needs continue. And that's why we included quite some concrete actions in the Affordable Energy Action Plan, in the Clean Industrial Deal. And maybe I would mention the grids package, which is supposed to arrive at the end of 2025 or early 2026, as announced. So that's maybe the big picture.
Great. Yeah, but good to hear that DSOs and TSOs, so grids, stay high on the agenda. And also thank you for illustrating with some numbers the impressive changes also we see and developments. And I think also before we still have the graph here on regarding the topics that were already discussed a bit before. And I think when listening also to the discussion of Peter, where he was highlighting a bit more also the resilience, climate adaptation aspect, my question would go a bit in the direction if you see also when you look at the different challenges, a bit of a shift in priorities, because we've had the last 5 years the Green Deal, and the focus was obviously on having ambitious targets. Now it is about meeting them. I think no one is calling into question the sustainability objectives we have, but the focus has shifted a bit more towards other aspects, the resilience, but also Europe's competitiveness. And therefore my question in this direction would be, has this this, I would say, bigger shift at the meter level, at the paradigm level, also an effect how DG ENER is looking at the challenges of DSOs, and if your perception of the core challenges of DSOs have changed?
Thanks a lot for this question. Quite interesting. Frankly, I don't think there is the Green Deal is dead. That's the maybe the first thing, because we tend to hear this a lot. Not at all the case. I would say the challenges actually remained more or less the same, but they amplified maybe. And of course, this is given the crisis that we experienced aftermath of the 2022 of the Russian war in Ukraine. And this is then reflected in the clean industrial deal. So, of course, what's emphasized more these days is the need for greater resilience, even greater supply diversification, not only, and this is important to mention, not only for energy commodities, but also for components, materials we use. So the net zero industry was already adopted before this commission actually to reflect this shift. And also, of course, the grids are, well, the ultimate precondition if we want to electrify, if we want to boost renewable domestic production of electricity and energy. So I would say that the emphasis on the renewables and in general, which is related to the grid development, of course, was still there, but now it's even more amplified by given the latest events. What I would like to mention is that you could see it already in the Grid Action Plan, which was published by the end of 2023. So what was quite clearly mentioned there were some of these challenges, so that we need to look at the financing and forward-looking investments to invest into grid. So you may be aware that the anticipatory investment guidance is being prepared. It should be published by the Copenhagen Forum this year, so by June this year. Then, of course, the further digitalize the grid to enhance the grid hosting capacity, so to be able to connect new loads as well as new generation. Then, of course, to make the grid smarter. So there is a very dedicated work between the DSO Entity and NSOE on the Technopedia platform, and also to tackle the permitting and supply chain constraints. So this is something which is already in place. And then the actions which are announced now under the Clean Industrial Deal and the Affordable Energy Action Plan, basically they would like to further address, maybe deepen the work on the remaining challenges. So, for instance, to address the tight situation on the supply market. So the grid manufacturing package was announced, so that's 1.5 billion a year under the EIB guarantees. Then for financing and further agreement between all the countries, the tripartite contract for affordable energy between public sector, including financial institutions, clean energy developers, and the industry was announced. Then, of course, we also try to further address the grid connection capacity, which is quite visible these days, I would say. So under the Automotive Action Plan, the grid connections guidance was announced. So that's also kind of work in progress. And then further actions are included under the grid, or will be included under the grid package. And last but not least, I would also like to mention the challenges related to skills and sufficient, I would say, sufficient enough of people. And that's the work on the skills. So there was a union of skills announced in February 2025, which should further deepen the union action on skills. And at DG ENER, we would also like to focus more on grids as part of the announced actions.
Okay, yeah, this was very clear. So basically all the challenges were in view before, but now we really see some of them a bit better, a bit more amplified, and also with additional actions, I think, as you mentioned rightly, with the supply chains, and also yeah, in a more geopolitical tense arena where this might be really relevant. But to also interact a bit with our audience, we thought that it would be nice also to ask from them a bit about the challenges. I think, Susanna, you have now highlighted some. Peter and Carlos have highlighted our vision that is certainly also linked to the challenges. And therefore, I would ask, first of all, Carlos to stop sharing the screen and to ask my little helper, Louise, who will now show us the question we would like to ask you from the audience. So just for explanation, you see a little QR code on the right on top. If you would please, if you want to do this with your mobile phone, please scan it and then you will see the questions. For all of those of you who don't want to use the phone, but who want to use the computer, Luis also posted the link to the question in the chat. So you can also just go to the link. And then we'll go to the question, which we would like to know from you, because the question we are asked was, according to you, yeah, okay, there are already good responses coming in, but the question was, according to you, what are the 3 biggest challenges for DSOs today? And everybody could pick 3 out of the 5 challenges we write here. So we have investments and financing, active system management, including integration of renewables, flexibility, smartening, so really a very big block. We also have the energy security and resilience. Then we have one challenge, we just subsumed several, like the supply chains, procurement and staffing, because we see them a bit linked to each other. And the 5th challenge we have named permitting and public engagement, because certainly also here we see quite some challenges for DSOs. I think some responses are still coming in, but yeah, it seems to stabilize, which is actually quite interesting, with one clear winner in the challenge ranking, which is investment and financing. I guess after hearing all these impressive numbers also from the recent report, Susanna, you were mentioning. But then we have ex aequo, that's also quite interesting, active system management, energy security, and the grid build out. I don't know, Susanna, you want to, yeah, oh, it's still moving, yeah. But any comments or thoughts on the outcome?
I mean, I'm not surprised. Of course, the biggest challenge is always with the investment and financing, because it relates to all the other aspects. So of course, in order to be able to continue with the grid build out, but also making it more resilient, more secure, to manage it actively, you need to invest. And as the grids are financed by network tariffs, so there is a direct consequence between financing the grids and the impact on final customers. Of course, this is the greatest challenge that we see, and we perceive it as well. We are already trying to address it on a cross-border level. So we have the CEF funding, basically, which is for the PCI PMI project, which is also for smart grids electricity projects that are on the DSO level. So we have quite some funding being provided in the last year for the smart grids. And we are, of course, looking into this in a greater detail, and we will see what the next MFF brings. But indeed, it shows very well, I would say, the perception of the issues or challenges that are there in the sector. What I find quite interesting is that cyber and climate adaptation ranked so high, because this is usually the climate adaptation is not the first obvious thing that we tend to hear from stakeholders, that this is something that we should need to prepare for. But indeed, it's very important, and it was, as mentioned by Peter, it was really illustrated by recent events in the past 1 year, I would say, the floods or the drought.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the comments. And indeed, I believe from our members, what we really heard, especially the last 2 years with all these extreme weather events, be it, as you say, yeah, be it wind, be it floods, be it heat, there was a lot. And certainly also, I believe that here the topic you mentioned also with the supply chains, and also with being able to help another DSO who was under distress and has now to rebuild very fast the infrastructure again. It is certainly important also to have then also components available that are fitting and that can then also be used. But certainly, I think what you were mentioning, with the investment and financing, you addressed also the CEF funding, which is certainly something several of our members are also interested in. And I think, as you said, for the next MFF, for the next budget, there are certainly also some hopes that smart grid projects could profit a bit more in the future, like in general from the European money. And then we have a second question that goes in a direction of the changing a bit of the perception. What is perceived now more relevant or higher on the agenda than it was 5 years ago, where we had again the 5 challenges, but we only give the option to pick one. And I think here, yes, we have quite a clear winner with the energy security and resilience. Susanna,
Yes,
any?
indeed, indeed. And then the active system management, yeah, because that's I mean it's becoming ever more relevant than with the RES integration and with the steep increase in renewables that we've seen.
Indeed. And I believe also interesting investment in financing. Yeah, okay, now we have some percentage. First it was at 0, but showing, I think, that this challenge has already been here also for a while. But really here, I think we can see this shift a bit towards, reflecting the situation we are currently also with a bit more unstable environment surrounding us. Very
Indeed.
good. So it was very good to hear also a bit from the audience. Where are your thoughts about the challenges and potential changes? And I think now, after having heard a bit from Susanna, the positive news that grids are on the agenda, high on the agenda of the Commission, the challenges are still more or less the same, but some are more amplified. We want to go a bit into greater detail, and certainly all of us are curious to hear what the European Commission has planned for the next months and years. And in order to make this also interact a bit with our technical vision, I would ask Louise to project our house here again. And then I would ask you, Susanna, maybe if you could comment, if you look into our house where we have the clear clusters of areas where we see the need for DSOs to play a big role. And certainly interested to hear from your side, if you could just give us like some little insights where the Commission has planned what and when.
Sure. So, I mean, for the first part of the question, if DSOs play a role in, I mean, from my perspective, it's pretty clear that they will need to play a role in all of this part. And actually, it's well reflected by the upcoming actions that the Commission plan in respective areas. So when I start from the top, so planning and investment as the first one. So indeed, we have the grid package planned, and I saw that also there was already one question in the chat in the Q&A, so I can already reply to that one. So the grid package should kind of continue and further address the challenges that were not addressed by the grid action plan. We are looking at integrated planning, so that would encompass both electricity as well as hydrogen and low carbon gases. So that would be my reply to the question. And in general, the grid package should simplify the rules on grids, so the TENI regulation. So we are looking into how the PCI-PMI process works. It should provide visibility and even greater visibility on the planning. So I already mentioned that the aim is to have the comprehensive and integrated planning that's aligned with the EU and member states' climate and energy objectives to ensure that we really plan our grids in a cross-sectoral way. Also, the aim is to kind of have aligned processes on national, regional, and European level, and ensure that the needs which are identified are followed up with actual actions on spot. Then, and this is also the challenge that was identified as air persistent, that's the permitting. So we really want to further simplify permitting, which includes digitalizing the permitting processes, early stakeholder engagement, possible shortening of deadlines for certain processes. So we believe this is also quite an important part of it. Then we also actually want to look into financing, which was identified also as a persistent challenge in this little poll that we have right now. So inter alia, this includes improving cost sharing mechanisms. And last but not least, part of the action should be also on digitalization and innovation, and also to increase further visibility and prioritization of manufacturing supply needs. But there it won't be only for the grids package. That's kind of, I would say, horizontal action, which is also covered by the grids manufacturing package. So that's on the planning and investment, mostly in the grid package, but there are also some other actions which are ongoing. So as you know, the ACER guidance on the distribution network development plans should be published in summer 2025. And of course, this is something that we will look into as well. And then there is also the network code on demand response, under which one part is on the specifically on the distribution grid planning. So that's another action which I would like to mention. Maybe on financing, it's also important and investment is that anticipatory investment guidance will be published. I already mentioned it previously, so that's still this year. But also, as announced in the Affordable Energy Action Plan in Q2 2025, we should publish a guidance on network tariffs, which should kind of provide the view of the Commission how this could be improved in order to lead to affordable prices for consumers and also tackle the use of public funds for financing grid development. Last but not least, the Clean Energy Investment Strategy will be published till this year, and that will also outline concrete actions to remove barriers and unlock private capital for strategic energy transition investments, such as grids. So that would be for the first part, planning and investment, the bigger one, I would say. And now coming into the respective parts, on the market facilitation and prosumer engagements, such as flexibility, energy sharing, there is a lot of legislation already in place. So I would say it's a lot about the implementation of the existing legislation and continuation of the processes. Part of it is exactly the network code on demand response, which I already mentioned. So that will provide further rules to kind of align across Europe. And also under the Affordable Energy Action Plan, there will be the Citizens Energy Package, which is quite focused on the retail electricity market. So that's shortly on the market facilitation. On operations and maintenance, this is related, of course, to the active system management. And I would say we could link this also to supply chain, because indeed, to be able to maintain the grid and operate it in a safely manner, you need first components in time, you need people, and then you of course need also the digitalization, which is also mentioned in the bottom. So maybe I will connect these two. So we have the competitiveness coordination tool and the pilot on grids announced in the Clean Industrial Deal. So this is something that we will look into, how this could basically further enhance the key challenges that we have. This is, of course, related to supply chain, as I mentioned. So we want to further continue in the work on the common specifications, how to basically provide greater visibility for manufacturers, but also improve the situation for the grid operators. So this is the grid manufacturing package and the guarantees that I mentioned. Other thing is the Net Zero Industry Act, and that's the resilience part of it, I would say. So that's already linked to the third, climate adaptation, cybersecurity. So in 2026, we should present the legislation framework on the energy security, a complete one. So that will be taken there. And maybe I will stop here to allow for any questions, because I think it was already quite a broad overview. Basically, we planned actions in every area which is mentioned in the technical vision.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this comprehensive overview. I think everybody who might have been concerned that there is not a lot going to happen on grids after already the grid action plan from last year and lots of activities, they were wrong. So there is a lot that is planned. And I think, yeah, you highlighted now also already that the grids package is already envisaged to come end of this year, which means that I assume that the preparations within DG ENER are already starting or having already started. And I think probably from some of our members, the question is then always, what can we expect when it comes to consultation or also being actively involved in the process? So maybe here the question, if you can already give us a bit of a timeline when we can maybe expect official public consultations, but also what can our members do to proactively share their experiences, share their thoughts with you?
Sure. So, of course, as you mentioned, the preparations are well ongoing. So, the official public consultation as well as call for evidence will be published on the European Commission website under the Have Your Say portal in the coming weeks. I would say May. We could envisage May, and of course, I think this is the very good channel, very transparent for everyone to participate. So I would really invite you to share your views on the areas that will be outlined in the call for evidence and also in the detailed question in the public consultation. And of course, how else could you kind of participate? So in general, I would say if you have any views on very concrete things that you are experiencing on a daily basis, just don't hesitate to share it with the European Commission, via the official canal. So you have the contacts on the website of the Commission, including myself, I would believe. So it's always possible to reach out to us to discuss, to present us the very concrete things that you experience on a daily basis. Because as part of the proposal, of course, we will need to publish an impact assessment. So we are collecting concrete evidence on what could be improved, where the issues stand.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot. And I would say from our experience as DSO entities, indeed, the doors of the Commission are always open for inputs that might be helpful. And apart from the timeline, I see that we have another question also in the chat that goes a bit more towards also the topics you mentioned. And yeah, since you're really the network planner or the planning expert within your unit, I think that's a good question for you, where it's asked, what is the expected, it's a bit of a bit more, the question, what the expected benefit is from harmonization. What would be a benefit from harmonizing the distribution network development plans?
Yeah, thanks a lot for this question. Indeed, very relevant. But maybe I won't make you super happy because I don't think I mentioned the harmonization of the distribution network development plans. So not sure we are that far, but we will tackle it, of course, as part of the assessment. But this is something that I would rather ask to yourself. So would you see benefits from harmonizing the network development plans on a distribution level? For sure, some further coordination between the TSO, DSO level in terms of scenarios, data used, that would be beneficial because then you basically base the network developments on the common and same assumptions. But we never expressed, the view that we would like kind of create a template, full template on the distribution network development plans. That's not in place even for the transmission network development plans. But if you have a different opinion, I will be very happy to hear it.
Thanks a lot. And I see Peter appeared on screen, so maybe you want to comment?
Yeah, since I was more or less invited by Susanna, I thought I jump in, and I think the time allows it, because indeed I think it is an interesting question, but also thank you for sharing your observations, Susanna, because indeed in many of our expert groups and with many of our members, we are working on further developing the distribution network development plans. And I think we see two priorities there. First, at national level, indeed, like you indicated, it is very important to have good scenarios, good interaction between TSOs and DSOs, because after all, DSOs are decentralized regional business. However, we see one benefit also at European level, and that's more connected to visibility of investments, especially for procurement and for the supply chain. So we try to, the word harmonization is perhaps indeed a bit too far reaching, but we try to encourage our members to create better visibility for the manufacturers so that they have a wider view on their investment opportunities to produce the equipment, which then could reduce the lead times and can also bring more efficiency. So a focus on national, but at European level for visibility, we see some benefits.
Indeed, thanks a lot, Peter, for this, because the visibility is something that's mentioned quite a lot, and I mean it's already an ongoing work under the action plan on grids.
Yeah, that's clearly related there. So indeed, that's a good connection. Thanks.
Yeah, Absolutely. I think here also we are active with ENSUI and Europa Cable and TNT Europe to try how to improve the situation. And I think, Peter, you can already stay with us with the camera because I see one more question. But I think after that, we can also slowly come to an end. But the question is an interesting one because it is referring to the works of the European Parliament that is also working on a own initiative report on electricity grids. And just that you know, Susanna, certainly we're also following the developments in the Parliament. Very interested. And maybe I think then from our side or from this member or participant, the question is also then how relevant would you then also assess as European Commission what is prepared now in the European Parliament since it is non-legislative? What relevance has this report then also for the Commission and the work you're doing?
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Indeed, we follow this very closely. So from us, it's another signal that indeed some even deeper action on the grid is needed. So basically, that's why it was decided that at the European Parliament level that they will go for the self-initiative report to kind of highlight the existing challenges that they see. And not sure if you've managed to read in detail the plan, but the report, but basically what they highlight is that there is a need for even more coordinated network planning, that we need to address the financing challenges to permitting. So quite some elements that were mentioned today are presented in the report. So for us, it's also a good signal that there is a willingness from the co-legislators to further look into this, to support, the common efforts to go for even better, streamlined, more coordinated grid planning and grid development.
Very good to hear then, which means one also should interact with the European Parliament. And I think also here the timeline is very fitting if we expect the final report of the Parliament in July. So right on time also to feed in the works of the European Commission then for the proposals for the grid package. Very good. I see no more questions currently in the Q&A. I think also not in the chat. So I think, Susanna, you did a great job in really explaining to us and giving us a very good overview what the Commission has planned for the months to come. And therefore, I would really like to thank you for being here today with us. And we look forward to continue the exchange, I would say, and maybe have you again in one of these webinars by the end of the year where you can present to us then the grid package.
Thanks a lot, Elisa. Thanks a lot for the kind invitation.
Thank you, Susanna. And I think with this, I would hand over to Peter for some closing words for this webinar.
Thank you, Elisa. And if you ask me to summarize and close a little bit what we have discussed, I try to group it in 3 or 4 areas. And the first area I would like to start with is the wider view that was also illustrated, I think, by Susanna from the European perspective. And not only from the European Commission, but you can also see from DG Ener and including the Parliament, that there is a wide support, but also a very good understanding now what we are talking about when grids are on the table. So I think everybody, can be, how do you say that, happy to see that they are high on the agenda, but also that everything is still connected to the objectives that we formulated and defined earlier, although perhaps with the competitiveness compass and the clean industrial deal, let's say the dimensions have been refined a little bit more to also keep a clear eye on having competitive industry, having affordable prices for the consumer and the industry, and making it work, as it were, in a very efficient way. So that's the general frame. And then if you look at what we have on the table already, I think it was also summarized by Susanna, but I think also our technical vision anticipates on that many things are there already, and we just need to keep an eye on implementing them either at European or national level, whilst at the same moment creating also the further conditions that we need. And I think also from the little poll that we did, with the participants, we can see that finance and funding is an important one. We need to work on further conditions for permitting. I think it is a prime topic also in the grid action plan, and also the wider challenges for the supply chain, the manufacturers, the staff, the personnel we need, the skills. So I think that that was illustrated very well. Also, I would say knowing that DSOs, our members, are in action mode already. To just give an illustration, many of our members have already substantially grown their investments, also to the level sometimes to doubling their investments in the past 3 to 4 years. So really in action mode. And then to bring it a bit more at, let's say, a specific dimension, it was interesting to see also in the poll that we all the more realize that resilience and reliability is important. Indeed, while changing the system, we need to keep the lights on. And in fact, TSOs and DSOs are cooperating in the system that is constantly live to also make that massive change from a single direction to a bidirectional change, but also that we need to be aware, acknowledge that climate is influencing us already by now with the flooding and the storms we have seen. So resilience and anticipation, but also restoring quickly after any extreme weather event. We need to keep a clear eye on that whilst making the changes. And the last one, I think it's a challenge to the DSOs more themselves to develop the active systems management that comes with the bidirectional system, because all the variability in the renewable sources with wind, with rooftop solar and other many decentralized energy resources, but also the new demand with the electric vehicles and the heat pumps, they will completely change the dynamics. So the way we operate the grid needs to be further developed. And I think we do not need a lot of, let's say, European regulation for that, but it's more a challenge for the DSO companies to develop it. So all in all, I would think that the connection between what is happening at the wider European level and what we try to summarize in the focus of the DSOs in our technical vision is well aligned. And I hope that that is also clear to the participants in this webinar. So I think, Elisa, I can also close the webinar by thanking everybody, Susanna for joining us, the participants for also giving their questions and participating in the poll. Thanking you, Elisa, for moderating and the rest of the team for facilitating, also Carlos for presenting your part. And let's stay connected, I would say. There are more webinars to come. We'll develop further plans, we'll develop further insights and knowledges. So stay tuned, I would say, follow us, and we'll be back in the time to come. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very nice rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.